Business is more than grinding to get it done. It's people, process, and payroll done right. It's protecting your team, leveraging every penny out of every dollar to build and grow. From HR to insurance, from strategy to scale. We give you the playbook so you don't have to figure it out the hard way. This is the PEO Playbook, hosted by Chad Philly with Staff Brokers Inc. Get valuable insights and learn to grow your team without HR headaches. Let's get started.
All right, welcome back to this episode of the PEO Playbook. I am Chad Philly with Staff Brokers, here with Staff Broker CEO Marty Gray. We're going to get into more of the nitty-gritty, I guess, so to speak, on PEO and how they help small business owners manage the everyday headaches associated with payroll, work comp, and human resources. Today, we're going to kick it off with one of the topics that can be an extreme pain for employers, and it revolves around what's called EPLI, which is Employer Practice Liability Insurance. And it's something that the PEO a lot of the time will require and or provide for the client. It typically, the major things it deals with are wrongful firing, racial discrimination, sexual harassment, things that fall under those discriminatory type categories that help an employer protect himself if those types of things were to come back. Ideally, you're running a good ship and don't have those things happening in your workplace, but it doesn't mean somebody can't say that those things were happening in your workplace. And that's kind of a spot where you kind of get in a jam. It's a good thing to have this as an additional insurance to help you out. And a lot of times the PEOs are very vital in helping clients through that process.
So EPLI is again, a good example of an insurance product that individually, if a client were to go with 50 employees and try to buy an EPLI product, it ends up being pretty pricey. But as you enter into the PEO relationship, because the PEO's gone out and bought it and they've got, thousands and thousands and thousands of the price that ends up coming down to the client is, significant because they're buying in bulk. Now, also, EPLI is that nobody ever wants to get sued. Nobody says, hey, I'm going to provide an environment where, one day I might get sued. But there are so many, examples of things that are just totally out of your control, right? You're not in control of your employees' sexual harassment. I mean, if you see it and you spot it, you'll write it up. If you see it and you spot it, you fire somebody. But what about the harassment that goes on behind the scenes that you don't necessarily know about until it's too late? The same things for racial issues. Anytime an employee feels uncomfortable working, kind of falls into an EPLI situation. So again, our policies and procedures are there to protect and to prevent these types of lawsuits from occurring. If they occur, now we have this insurance product that's there so that you're not all of a sudden seeing a $50,000, $75,000 claim if you lose. Quite honestly, we're not in charge of whether we win or lose. The court is, right? And you have an attorney-backed program that's going to help defend you in court. So I'm a big fan of EPLI, especially at the prices in which PEOs are able to offer it to the small guy.
Yes, the PEO is it's from, if I recall correctly, I want to say it's probably a third to a quarter of the price when it's being purchased through the PEO. And also a lot of times the deductible can be similar, even better. Typically, EPLI insurance does carry a fairly healthy deductible. And I say that, probably $25,000 is the standard deductible, which, at first everybody's like, well, that's a pretty big number, but you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars if you end up in a court case as it
Right.
relates to sexual harassment, wrongful firing, racial discrimination, That's it. But that's what the PEO is there for. It's not just the insurance policy to have the insurance policy. You can get even into employee handbooks when a PEO helps you build an employee handbook. It will have a sexual harassment policy in it typically, and they'll have it up to current date and legal language, all these things that are in there so that employees have signed off saying that they knew what these policies were. So it gives you a defense, and ideally, hopefully, it never goes to that type of thing as far as as far as going into court, and hopefully your first notice of there being an issue in your workplace is not when you've been summoned.
Right.
You typically would like to know it before then, because at that point, the prevention mode is over, and it's the reality of dealing with it at that point in time. But say it is expensive. You can be on the hook for a decent chunk of change, but it is far better than going in, being caught in that situation blindly, and having to shell out attorney's fees and all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the EPLI stuff that's offered out there does include third party in the PEO world. So it's not just particularly sexual harassment, that one employee may be doing to another, but it may be that you have an employee that's engaged with customers or in and out of people's homes, job sites, or whatever. And that's where the incidents are occurring. And it's not necessarily just between people that are directly your employees in supervision, but can include and help with coverage for those outside factors, of which the employer still got to address it if they know about it. But
Yeah, I mean, with clients, you never know. And, it's probably no surprise that the owner of a business can sometimes be accused of sexual harassment to an employee, even if it was a consensual relationship with an employee who then gets pissed, says says whatever, and takes things to a legal ground. Well, in that particular case, I'm not saying the client was right or wrong. What I am saying is the EPLI had his back. He had a ceiling on what his expenses were with a claim like that, and he had a PEO, quite honestly, who wanted to help him close that matter so that it wasn't something that continued on.
right.
It got large.
Mhm. And along those lines, so that's the great insurance product on the employer side. Something else that's out there that a lot of PEOs will provide, either as part of their service or at a minor additional cost, is what's known as EAP, or Employee Assistance Program. And that is basically designed to give employees a place to go. I don't want to say it's, per se counseling, but to call and talk with people, talk with, it would potentially be a counselor depending on what
Yeah.
the topic is, but things that are going on in their life out of it. If there's an abusive spouse in the house, just like, I know it was huge. We had some clients that benefited tremendously when one of the hurricanes went through and a bunch of people lost their homes. The employer had a resource there for these employees to talk to, counseling, get help, get people to talk with them on, how do I get through this? How do I survive it?
Right.
And
Being in a employer, the owner of a business, you know, you bring these people, these employees into your life. They're they're helping you achieve your goals, and they become a little bit like, let's say a work family. And people have been with you 5, 10, 15 years, 20 years, and you see them have the struggles that they go through. Being able to have a product like EPA is being able to say, I don't have the knowledge of how to help you with this particular, nor do I want to be the one who listens to everything. But we do have this program. It's an 800 number. Get started, and you'll have somebody who can give you some guidance and some direction on how to deal with this particular thing. One of the things I remember being rather, may sound silly, but when COVID came around, all of these employees are struggling with all kinds of different, thought patterns as to what's going on, and am I going to be able to go back to work, or why can't I, what's really happening in the world? And they just needed somebody to talk to, and employer practices, it helped. It helped in that situation.
yeah, very, very much so. And like I said, even in a small company where you've got, you may have great work family and, you know, talk about everything. I mean, our office is relatively, you know, small and stuff, but there's just flat out things with employees that employees may never have a desire to come to somebody else that they work with to have that,
Right.
one of those discussions, like, and yeah, because it could be anything. They're having an affair and the anxiety with it, or who knows what. It's just everything that's out there, but it's just, it's something that's great to have available if you're not in a position where you can have those conversations. And the bigger you get, you're not going to have those. The larger the company, upper management, whatever, so they're not going to have those same type of relationships
Right.
with every employee where everybody's going to be comfortable that, everything can be talked out at work.
And it's not just for the employee; it's for the employee's family.
Yes, correct. It is.
So that brings in a whole host of other
Yeah,
topics that aren't really meant to be brought into the workplace.
get legal help with divorce for kids that kids that are going through divorces.
Right.
Parents have been divorced. There's just a ton of things that are out there that that's a huge benefit and resource for give the employees somewhere to go, and it's somewhere that it's confidential. Nobody else in the company will know about it unless the employee were to share any information about it. It doesn't get reported back to anybody. It's just there as a resource to help them out.
Right. And that's not just a phone call resource. They'll give them, if there's medical or some type of procedure that they need to go through or do, they'll give them a bullet point of these are the things you need to do. Go to this website, get this resource, and start using it also.
All right. Well, I think that's it for today's episode of the PEO Playbook. Thanks for joining us, and hope to catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for tuning in to the PEO Playbook, where we help business owners unlock the power of PEOs and take their team to the next level. This episode was proudly brought to you by Legacy Sales Engineering. If you're ready to simplify HR, scale your business, and put the right team behind you, visit staffbroker.net to get started with Staff Brokers today.